Hey guys, I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, so I figured I would do it now. This is going to be about the psychology of the perpetrators. Now, this is by no means a full analysis of the perp nature, but a video like that would take hours, and I know you guys don't want to sit here for hours, and I don't either. So I will include maybe half of what I wanted to talk about, and I'll talk about this issue in other videos too. Even still, this is going to be a long video, so if I talk fast, forgive me, but I know you don't want to be here for hours, right? Okay, here we go. The psychology of the perpetrators. In order to rule the world, prospective conquerors first attempt to destroy intelligent, educated, free-thinking individuals. In order to destroy these individuals, the prospective conquerors first take control of the masses, the sheeple. Those who control the masses have absolute power over the entire world. The masses will, in turn, destroy anyone who the more intelligent conquerors set them against. This is what is taking place right now. This is the end game. But it's happened before. It happened during the Holocaust, and it happened in East Germany, when the people rose up to fight communism. But when it comes to the perpetrators of what we nowadays call organized stalking, let me get something out of the way first. Not all perpetrators are bad people. Some perpetrators, I assume, are forced into this. Others, again I'm assuming, became involved in this without understanding what it was, without ever anticipating the harm they would be forced to inflict upon others, and are now afraid to leave for fear of becoming targeted themselves. Many targets, myself included, believe this and understand the plight of those who truly don't like harming people, but see no way out of this mess. However, this only accounts for some of the people working as perpetrators. There are many others who do understand the harm they are causing and either don't care or worse, they enjoy it. This video is about them, people who willingly, with knowledge of their role and the harm caused by such, engage in the crime that we, the targets, call organized stalking. It isn't only the psychopaths running this program that the targets must deal with. The foot perps, or hired lackeys, are really the first to make contact with targets on a daily basis. For this reason, it is important to understand the psychology of those who work as perpetrators for whoever or whatever is running this sick program. That said, consider, a perpetrator has no reason to seek out or even desire the truth. He or she is enjoying the group bonding that goes along with this type of attack. This primitive, tribal, us versus them mentality will create a close bond between former enemies. And so the organizers behind this sick program use that animal instinct in order to create and maintain a bond between the perpetrators, a bond that is reinforced whenever they gather together to attack a common enemy, aka the target. And they do the opposite with the targets. They try to keep us isolated from each other so that we don't have allies and have no pack to run with. Think about it. The perpetrators are gathered in a massive group against a common enemy, and it makes them feel good. This catering to primal instinct is something the psychopaths who run this program are quite adept at, as they easily manipulate the sheeple by way of their animal nature, and all of the primal urges therein. The perpetrators are also being paid, which adds an extra incentive for them to join this program and remain in it no matter how much damage they do to the lives of others. Consider this. A group of young 20-something males are getting paid to follow around a young woman, to hunt, stalk, and terrorize her, even to gain access to her private affairs such as emails, accounts, files from her doctor's visits. They can even watch her with the cameras they put in her bedroom. They are getting paid to hunt, stalk, harass, invade, and even sexually exploit and objectify a young woman. Okay, and this is their predatory nature. Okay, so they're getting paid to act on their natural predatory instincts. It's an offer that the less evolved, really, those who are nothing more than animals in human flesh, just can't turn down. Okay? And unfortunately, there are more animals in human flesh among us than there are civilized human beings who would stand against this. But to those who would stand against this, God bless you. Anyway, so these people, they can't turn this down. They're not going to turn it down. And from that point, they must begin justifying to themselves what they're doing to others. Some might even have believed, because they wanted to, such horrific lies about the target that they are able to convince themselves that they're doing something good by attacking the target in the way that they are. Imagine how many lies the worst of these monsters must tell themselves in order to believe that their actions are justified. But even women get in on this sick program, though maybe for different reasons. They also lie to themselves in order to justify themselves. There are both men and women who eventually do begin to wake up and figure out that they are involved in something bad. When they do, they become afraid at the prospect of speaking out or even stopping. They see what happens to the targets and don't want the same thing to happen to them. For this reason and many more, they will block out anything that might get in the way of the lies they were told by the organizers. Lies they want to believe, as it's the only way they can justify what they're doing. In fact, they are so desperate to believe that they're not involved in something horrific, that their actions are justified, that they will easily latch onto any excuse the organizers give them, even if the excuse makes little to no sense. They will not question. They cannot question, as doing so might lead to their own awakening, the realization that they have been involved in a hideous crime that is meant to destroy other human beings. For this reason, if you bring up organized stalking and give them some examples of what is involved, they will deny such a thing exists even as they're doing it. And they will repeat the quote-unquote paranoid accusation against the target, meaning they'll call the target paranoid for even bringing up such things. And they'll say this even as they're doing exactly what they're calling the target paranoid for speaking out about. So for example, the target might say something like, people are following me around and getting instructions on what to say and do near me, probably via text or email, and maybe they're using their AirPods or something. So the perpetrators who are gathered together in a group awaiting their next set of instructions on how to interact with the target will then make a comment such as, "You're paranoid, it must be in your head." Even as they're engaging in the very thing they're calling him paranoid for speaking out about. And yes, I know some are just repeating what they're told by whoever's giving them the orders, but others believe this lie, even as they act out the very thing they are denying. As I said, they're not chosen for their intelligence, and some don't even understand that there is more to this than just walking up to someone and making a seemingly senseless comment. And so when we try to explain to them the serious nature of this crime, as we attempt to help them see the totality of it all, they deny their involvement, as they're not the ones who are breaking into people's homes, vandalizing property, slipping chemicals into food, etc. It's very difficult at this point to get them to comprehend that their small role is part of a much bigger crime. But sometimes a target might finally achieve a victory over the woefully malfunctioning mind of a perpetrator and actually bring on that hallelujah moment where the perpetrator is finally forced to accept reality, but it only lasts for a moment. His or her mind will quickly begin attempting to once again justify what he or she is involved in. Once they're finally forced to admit that they are indeed following people around and making comments or gestures as they're told to by someone else, well, they'll admit it. It's just they'll deny doing anything wrong. They'll justify their actions. And finally, they'll deny the existence of the attacks spoken about by the targets that actually do appear to be of criminal nature. So now they'll admit following people around and making comments, but they'll deny that the worst attacks are happening, like the vandalism and everything else, right? They will claim that those things are all just creations of a paranoid mind, just as they initially claimed that the belief that one is being followed is simply due to paranoia. This faulty reasoning is going to happen every step of the way. Since many perpetrators are unaware of the worst attacks being waged against the targets, they continue to play their little part, believing that they're doing nothing wrong. And even though the target tries to explain to them what they're involved in, they refuse to hear it. But if at any point the perpetrators are actually forced to accept what they're part of, to accept the fact that they're part of a group that did wage worse attacks than simply following people around and making comments, they'll find some way to justify that as well. And they will insist that the initial accusation against the target, meaning calling the target paranoid, is real, even though they know that the things the target was called paranoid for were actually taking place. Next, if they're forced to admit all of this, they will then play the Good Samaritan card and act like they were just doing the right thing for the good of the nation by keeping an eye on someone who was deemed a potential threat. Remind them that they waged a massive war against an innocent person involving illegal surveillance, home invasion, setups, false accusations, baiting for a response, just to use that response against the target, trying to drive the target crazy and worse, and they'll find a way out of this as well. It's just the same. Okay? They're never going to admit that they engaged in criminal behavior, and they're never going to admit that the target is innocent and they were just trying to set him up all along, or her. They are, first and foremost, incapable of honesty if honesty gets in the way of their own self-justification. This is what happened during the Holocaust. One man could not alone slaughter millions of people. The monster had help from the masses. The German masses at the time helped the Nazis hunt, stalk, and track the victims, both Jewish and those few Gentiles who actually stood against Hitler. And there were some German Gentiles who stood out against Hitler, and he killed them too. And the masses helped wage this war against everyone. You know, they waged the war against everyone, including their own. These masses even reported or turned in their own colleagues, co-workers, friends, neighbors to the Gestapo, knowing that this act would lead to innocent men, women, and children being dragged off to the death camps. One family even moved into the empty home of their Jewish neighbors who they had reported to the Gestapo, and for this reason had been dragged off to Auschwitz. The same type of attack, aka recruiting the masses to hunt, stalk, track, spy on, and report their own friends, family, and neighbors, happened again after World War II. In East Germany, when the East German police, the Stasi, waged psychological warfare, which was later termed Zersetzung, or total destruction, against anyone who opposed communism. And many of the monsters, including the mindless masses, who waged this type of warfare on innocent people, still support, even today, still support their prior actions. Though a few who look back and understand that they made a mistake only came to understand that once they were removed from the system of propaganda that they used in order to justify their actions. Even a psychiatrist mentioned regretting what he or she did, and I don't remember if this was a man or a woman. He mentioned regretting what he did, including giving out diagnoses that he realizes now were bogus, right? Mental health diagnoses. He labeled people mentally ill, though he now realizes they were not mentally ill. They were the sane ones. But while it was all taking place, he could not see it. He just couldn't separate himself from the pack or look past the propaganda far enough to realize that he was making a mistake and simply repeating the propaganda that was being forced on him, even though it didn't make sense, even though it was clearly wrong. The sheeple today are what they've always been, incapable of standing against a powerful group, desperate for approval from a dominant authority figure, and perfectly capable of calling extreme evil good if said powerful authority figure tells them it is. And in many cases it starts out slowly, seemingly benign, even fun. A while back I watched an episode of Secret Eaters. I think it was called Secret Eaters. It's a reality show where the producers went to the friends and neighbors of the people who agreed to be on the show, and had those friends and neighbors follow these people around, recording them, trying to catch them secretly eating. Now, these people did agree to have cameras put in their homes to watch them 24/7, but they did not agree to have their friends, neighbors, and other family members watch them and track them and follow them with cameras and then report all that to another source. Okay, it's creepy and it's kind of perverse. Even still, this seems so benign because it's just about catching people breaking their diet. It will even be presented as something positive, and yet what we are watching is the normalization of a total surveillance state, something out of Orwell's 1984, where not just the state, but the entire population spies on everyone around them. A society where no one has privacy, and thus no one has freedom. And since it's being introduced into society in a seemingly harmless way, and even in a positive manner, the sheeple will accept it, and even condemn those who stand against it. You know, and this is going to happen with every single group. In this case, it's about, dieters, and of course, anyone who enjoys attacking people who are overweight and live unhealthy lifestyles will just jump right on this and attack anyone who stands against it, even though the problem we have with it is not about food, it's about surveillance. And that's going to happen in every single case, no matter what group it is. Okay, and this is how the masses are used to help create this surveillance state. If the people who agreed to be on this show had expressed anger at how easily their neighbors began following them around and spying, they would have been condemned, possibly accused of simply not wanting to be caught in the act of cheating on their diet. And worse, scary it is how easily the masses were recruited into hunting, tracking, and spying on other people. Terrifying how little convincing it took to get them to follow around their neighbors with a camera and then report every move the neighbors made to another source. But this is the nature of the beast, and they were enjoying their new role, all the while reminding themselves of the excuse they were given, that this is for the benefit of the people who need help. In the end, the people being hunted were told and spied on were told what had taken place, and it was presented to them as something positive on the part of the spies, and something that they, the contestants, I don't know what else to call them, should feel guilty over, meaning because they were caught eating something they shouldn't have. And they did feel guilty. They felt ashamed. And so they never bothered to open their mouths and complain about the creepy nature of having their own friends and neighbors follow them around in secret. But for targets of organized stalking, it's even worse. We are shown that we are being followed, tracked, spied on, and screwed with, but we're never told why. And no one believes us when we try to explain what's happening. What really bothers me, though, is that this cowardly predatory nature, this animal instinct to impose oneself on others, to hunt, stalk, conquer, is being encouraged, when in fact, people who exhibit such tendencies, aka predatory, should not only be discouraged, but looked upon with disdain, and their predatory nature should be condemned. And this has happened all along. The worst aspects of human nature have been encouraged, even by psychiatrists, while the victims have been condemned and labeled crazy. Maybe this is why the world is in such the bad state that it's in now. Anyway, it's all happening again, just as it was in East Germany when Zersetzung was being waged on anyone who opposed communism. The attacks are set up so that we are not believed, and when we try to complain, we look crazy. Okay, then they can diagnose us with any mental illness and discredit us that way. And since the masses are so uneducated in regard to these issues and this type of warfare, it is impossible to reason with them. It is as impossible to reason with them today as it was for the victims of the East German Stasi to reason with the masses, the sheeple, at that time, or for the victims of the FBI's war on civil rights activists, which was called COINTELPRO, to convince people at that time what was being done to them. In the latter, though, it was only a small group of human rights activists who got the proof needed, gave it to an honest reporter, and made it public, and God bless those few brave men and women. They were uncommon then, and they're even less common now, especially since now we have paid provocateurs, who are really nothing more than paid propaganda pushers, spewing out whatever propaganda the people paying them want spread. So now we have, what is it, hire a mob, is that what they're called, people who just hold up signs and protest something for or against something. They don't even know. They don't even care. They're just paid to do it. And we have plants, people who are planted in certain areas, and they're paid to make certain statements at certain times in certain places and so on. Some of them don't even understand the meaning behind what they're told to say, but they say it anyway because they're being paid. Others might understand the meaning, but they don't care. It's a job. They're called hired actors, I'm guessing. Some of them are probably too stupid to understand what they're being used for. And they clearly don't care about going out there and lying to their fellow Americans. But moving on. There are a lot of different angles that the organizers behind this use in order to recruit people, okay? Some people are recruited via community watch programs or something similar. They start out with righteous intent, a desire to keep their community safe, but end up helping real criminals stalk, harass, and in some cases rape and kill innocent people whose names were added to the list for that purpose. And when I say community watch programs, I don't necessarily mean just government programs. They could be any program where, any group that is infiltrated by someone who tries to tell them, to look out for these bad guys, and they start keeping an eye on whoever they're told to look out for. It's just targets are being set up as bad guys. And I'm not saying that people, here's the thing. People should have a right to know if there's a threat in their community, but they also need to know that innocent targets are being added to the list of threats, okay? Once the name of an innocent person is added to a watch list, he or she will receive the same treatment as real criminals and worse. And I say worse because at least convicted criminals are given a defense. We're not given a defense. Targets of organized stalking, they're not given a defense because the perpetrator, the organizers behind this want the perpetrators only to hear the accusations against the targets. They don't want anyone to hear the target's defense because we can clearly defend ourselves because the accusations are false. Okay, and this is how they keep people attacking us. Once a target is attacked in this way, they're going to be run out of society. So how are they treated, right? Well, this not only includes being run out of businesses, communities, and even formerly friendly circles, but it also includes location tracking. With social networking, communicating instantly is as easy as a finger swipe, as a target's location can be sent to anyone who is on the network, in the chat room, or whatever. So, from one node to the next, these community watch groups can track a target, sending live information to everyone else who has access to the social network. Some of these people are organized stalkers, who have now manipulated a community watch group into helping them track and stalk their prey. The people in the community watch groups usually believe they are helping to stop crime when in fact they are aiding criminals in one of the worst crimes that has ever taken place on U.S. soil. But those involved are not always so innocent. At some point, many of these perpetrators, and I'm calling them perpetrators now because once they realize they're involved in something horrible and they do it anyway, at that point they become perpetrators. They're not just, easily fooled, harmless people. Okay, so at some point, many of these perpetrators do begin to realize that they are involved in something bad, but instead of admitting the truth, they lie to themselves in order to justify themselves. Until they do this until they can continue their actions without remorse. They lie and lie and lie in order to justify their own mind, in order to justify in their own mind not only what they have done, but what they will do. They block out anything that might force them to admit the truth. They hurt other people on orders and justify it all via self-deception. When they get to this point, when they're lying to themselves in order to justify the harm they're inflicting on others, they are no longer simply innocent simpletons. They become truly evil. They become perpetrators. They're criminals, right? Once you know what it is, what's going on, and you know that you're involved in something horrible and you keep doing it, you are no longer innocent by way of ignorance. You are as guilty as the psychopaths giving you orders. Unless for some reason you truly can't stop. And there are some people in that situation, but that's not who we're talking about here. Some of the perpetrators crave approval from powerful authority figures and feel special and chosen when a powerful appearing man asks them for help. In this case, a perpetrator will believe whatever the man tells him or her, no matter how bizarre. He or she will bend over backwards to please him, even if it means committing what would normally be considered a crime. Watch on YouTube, Obedience to Authority, What Would You Do? And you will see just how easily a powerful-looking authority figure can convince someone, in this case a woman, to do as he asks, even if it means placing in another woman's drink what she is led to believe is a roofie. Now, or the knockout drug, right? Imagine how dangerous that is. Yeah, or stealing someone's wallet, or kidnapping, or worse. Seriously, go look for the video. Their desire to appease is so profound that these people will block out anything that might signal danger. Someone such as this will act blindly on orders, almost giddy that a powerful man asked her to aid him. She feels so good that the question of could this be wrong never occurs to her, or if it does, she quickly brushes aside any concerns and morality. These people want approval, will do anything to get it, anything to keep it, no matter who else has to suffer because of it. Also, gathering in a group against a common, and in this case created enemy, gives some people a social network, a pack to run with, allies to bond with. Sadly, their bonding can only come at the expense of others, and ganging up on easy targets not only provides a means of group bonding, it also gives them a sense of accomplishment, this false notion that they're really getting the bad guys, when of course they're not. And they do this without actually risking their own lives. After all, chasing the real criminals is dangerous, but chasing people that deep down they know can't or simply won't fight back gives them the illusion of productivity when in fact all they're doing is playing a war game. In fact, this is starting to seem a lot like a live action role-playing game, though in this case the targets being hunted are not willing, did not consent, and don't want to play. Okay, as I said, there are a lot of people chosen for this, and they're chosen for different reasons. There's another group now, um, chosen as perpetrators, and these are the bad guys. Okay, these are the real bad guys. These knuckle dragging, chest thumping cowards typically get involved in the stalking program for the excitement, the adventure, and because sneaking around and secretly infiltrating and controlling other people's lives caters to their own predatory nature. It also makes them feel special, cool even, edgy, to be in on something that others are clueless to, and to have so much power over their helpless victims. These are true psychopaths. They are predators, but remember, predators are cowards. They also engage in this type of behavior due to a desire for group bonding, to run with a pack, stand with a pack against a common enemy, to have something to fight for, or just simply someone to fight. Yet those who get involved in this type of war game are too cowardly to go after anyone they believe to be a real threat. For this purpose, they join with a massive group against a lone target or an easy target. They work themselves up over how terrible the target supposedly is and how much he or she supposedly deserves this. But deep down, they know that this person was never a real threat, at least in the beginning, and never really deserved this. Although by the time they're done with the target, they might think the target deserves it because the target will at least start trying to fight back. And anyway, though, the target has no way of really doing any damage to any of these perpetrators who are in a massive group with power, resources, and gear that the target doesn't have, even if he or she does try to fight back. This makes the target easy prey. The cowardly predator can now engage in the battle he craves, but without any real threat to himself or herself. Kind of like a hunter who goes on an expedition. He has a gun, his companions have guns, the tour guide has a gun, and the vehicle they're in is armored. They are not in any real danger, yet they pretend to be. Almost like kids playing dress-up. They are going off to look for a fight, or better stated, they are going off to look for the illusion of a fight. They want the sensation or exhilaration that is triggered by their primal instinct to fight and conquer, but they don't really want to face an actual threat, so they pretend. Since they are in no real danger, obviously no animal can defend itself against a hunter's gun, plus they're in an armored vehicle. They are simply working themselves up into a biological frenzy, a state that resembles that of their ancestors when on a hunt, in order to fulfill their primitive desire to first and foremost face the threat, and then to go to battle, and finally to conquer. Can you imagine how much safer this world would be if all of these people would go after a real threat instead of just waging this type of war on innocent, easy targets? I mean, my God, how much good they could do if they put all this money, this time, this energy, these resources into fighting a real threat. But they won't. That would be too dangerous. On with the hunt. And so they ride to the site and spot their prey. They're getting more and more worked up, even demonizing the prey, the beast, in their increasingly frenzied banter. They stop, let's just say a city block away. They can see the animal clearly through their binoculars. Little by little, they inch closer, driving carefully so as not to prematurely startle their prey and cause it to run. They could shoot it from a distance, but that would ruin the illusion of a heroic and hard-won battle. At some point, the motor of the vehicle startles the animal, let's just say a lion, and it takes notice of the invaders. The lion stands up and instead of fleeing, begins pacing back and forth, eyes locked on the enemies. The lion is protecting his family, his cubs and their mother, who are hiding in the bushes. He isn't going anywhere. Not willingly, anyway. Little does he know that he has no chance against a man who can kill him from a distance, without effort, yet will demand all of the praise of a war hero when he gets home with the lion's head mounted on a plaque. One of the hunters honks his horn, expecting the lion to charge at them in order to increase the tension of the battle. The lion does not leave his current location. Another hunter shoots a rubber bullet at the lion, expecting him to charge, but he continues to hold his ground. He isn't moving away from his family. The hunters continue to try to provoke the lion, hoping to get a video of a vicious, roaring beast charging at them as they quote-unquote heroically defend themselves. Plus, this is no fun. They want at least some sense of danger, even if it's only an illusion. The men cheer as the lion begins to bare his fangs. Now they're sensing a real threat, though they know deep down that the lion has no chance against their guns. The lion finally begins to prowl closer, and and they throw things at him in order to work him up even more. They want him to fight back just enough so that they can pretend so that they can pretend that they fought a real battle. So they provoke and then back off, letting him get a little closer, letting him growl a little more. Then he begins to charge at them, and they shoot. This is their war game, a reenactment of their ancestral instinct to fight and conquer. They do this all from their safe space where deep down, they know that they were never in any real danger. Many of the perpetrators are playing the same game, though they are using humans as their prey. Sadly, what this means for the rest of us is that we will be forced to play this game with them, willing or not, as their prey. So here's the point. There are psychological and biological factors being manipulated by the psychopaths running this program when it comes to the people they choose as perpetrators. Okay? Many perpetrators fall victim to the shortcomings of their own mind, meaning they seem unable to reason properly or honestly, and they appear to have a difficult time understanding their own logic behind the choices they've made or forming an accurate conclusion about a statement made by someone else. They also fail to properly analyze external situations so that they either misread what is taking place or they block out any information that gets in the way of what they want to believe, were told to believe, or think should be true. This makes it easier for the psychopaths to manipulate them. Perpetrators were not chosen for their intelligence. They were chosen for their lack of insight, lack of honesty, including self-honesty, their poor reasoning ability, and their almost desperate need to be accepted by a large group or powerful authority figure. All of these things make them easy to lie to, manipulate, and control. When the hive mind takes over, there are no individuals. There is the hive. And the one who controls the hive controls everything, even the entire world that the hive is in. The members of the hive, like insects, act in unison in order to carry out the orders of the controllers. They do this without thinking or reasoning. They no longer think for themselves. Most no longer can. There are certain people in society who would willingly give up their own beliefs, morals, and even identity in order to fit in with the larger group. Even if the group is corrupt, these people will take on the corrupt belief system of the group, allow themselves to be reprogrammed into holding as moral that which is immoral, and will eventually sacrifice their own individual identity in order to please the controller of the hive and to fit in with other hive members. Understand? While it's very important to be able to work with others in a group, it is even more important to be able to think independently of the group. Both qualities are necessary for humanity to prosper. People tend to achieve great things when they can work together, but they can also stop terrible evil from taking place if they can think outside the box or hive. Hitler's mass murder did not stop because of the mindless masses acting in unison with the hive. It stopped because of those few individuals, the few brave men and women, who were able to separate themselves from the lies they were told by the powerful figures of authority, detach themselves from the hive that continued to reinforce the propaganda of the powerful authority figures, and eventually stand up for the truth. They are the reason the war ended. If it was up to the hive, we would all be living in Nazi Germany now. There is a time and place for everything. A mentally healthy person must possess both qualities and know when to use each, meaning to work with the group if doing so can be beneficial, but also to know when to take a step back, think freely, and stand alone if necessary, just in case the group goes bad. Those chosen as perpetrators seem to have a hard time with the latter, the desperate need to feel accepted by a large group, a herd, or hive, along with the inability to think and reason beyond whatever the hive conditions them to think, renders them especially receptive to circular reporting, among other things. So, for example, a powerful authority figure will tell a horrible lie about a target in question. He tells this to one hive member. The hive member believes him and repeats the lie, without question. The next hive member believes his or her fellow member and repeats the lie to another. This continues on until the masses of people are repeating the same lie, some repeating it so convincingly you'd think they were there and saw it take place. Yet they weren't there. They saw nothing. They, like the other hive members, are repeating the same lie they were told, as if they know for a fact that it's true, and by doing so, they make it seem true simply due to the sheer number of people reporting it, or repeating it. None of them stop to consider that just as they repeated what they were told, their fellow hive members are also just repeating what they were told. None of them know for sure that it's true. As is the nature of a hive, not one of them will be able to break free, to reason honestly, to consider that maybe everyone is simply repeating what they heard and not what they know. A hive member will not and cannot engage in this level of honest reasoning. And so as hive members continue pushing the lie via false confirmation, the lie is accepted as fact, which gives the hive members yet another reason, albeit false, to justify their attack on the person being lied about. But let me say one thing too, this can also work in reverse, where certain people try to denounce something simply because a lot of people say it. They'll call it mass hysteria, right? It works in reverse too. Just because a lot of people are repeating the same thing doesn't make it false. Doesn't mean it's bunk. So be careful with that. On we go. Unjustified justification. The perpetrators need a reason to justify attacking the target, and they will find a reason even if they have to create one. If we consider how much perpetrators have to lose if they can no longer fulfill their role, we begin to understand why they are so willing to lie to themselves in order to justify their actions. Even still, it is that ability to self-deceive that enables them to continue harming and in some cases killing people without remorse for the harm they have caused. One of the worst ways in which perpetrators deceive themselves is by blocking out actual facts that might get in the way of what they want to believe. If a powerful-looking authority figure who presents some sort of badge asks a random perp in training, that's what I call them, future perpetrators, perps in training, to do something, that future perp will do it without question, even if the requests from the quote-unquote superior appear to be harmful and even criminal, even if the task might cause serious physical or mental harm to the target. If we're dealing with a mentally stable individual, at some point warning signs are going to start popping up. The individual is going to question the commands that he or she is being given. When it comes to the perp nature, as I call it, potential perpetrators will not question. Those warning signs that should be appearing will not appear. They will follow orders blindly without thinking or reasoning. In my opinion, it is these people who should be red flagged and not what's happening now, right now, victims of serious psychological and psychological and emotional abuse are being red flagged. People who have been seriously, who are victims of gaslighting and are suffering serious post-traumatic stress disorder are being red flagged, or whistleblowers or activists whose opinions differ from that of the current regime, right? People are finding a reason to red flag them, and they can lose everything for that. Instead, maybe we should be keeping an eye on the people who are so mindless and so easily manipulated and so desperate for approval from the dominant authority figures that they would do absolutely anything they were told, no matter how destructive, and are so capable of lying to themselves in order to justify what they're doing that they don't even care, and they don't even realize they're doing anything wrong. But I digress. A mentally healthy individual will begin to ask himself or herself the following questions. 1. If the target really is mentally unstable, how will it help the situation to mimic him in public, whisper insults under our breath to him, and then deny doing it, take something out of his cart at the store and deny doing it, make jokes about him being spied on, and so on? Won't this type of gaslighting make his mental illness worse? Isn't it a bit counterproductive and possibly even cruel? 2. Question number 2. If the target really is prone to violence, how will it keep the peace in the community by harassing him, running a cart into him in the store, bumping into him, aiming cars right at him, and forcing him to run and jump out of the way, spitting angrily on the ground every time he's passed, and so on? It seems as if this is meant to provoke him, not to calm him. 3. Why would a legitimate law enforcement officer ask for another person to be set up, entrapped, or falsely accused? If the person is guilty of something, shouldn't law enforcement be trying to uncover a real crime instead of attempting to set him up for something he didn't do? 4. Will a legitimate cop or other real law enforcement ask average citizens to plant spyware in someone's apartment, to break in and turn back the clock or do stupid things, rummage through the clothing in a person's closet and make a mess for that person to find, or worse, slip a chemical of some sort into the person's bottled water, or, even just later to make comments about things that the person said or did in the privacy of his or her own home, just showing the target that he's being watched And by this, and by doing this, showing the target that he's being watched 24/7, even in places that should be considered private. This is sick. Okay, would any legitimate law enforcement agent ask anyone to do that? And the answer is no. There are corrupt law enforcement agents who would, but not legitimate ones. 5. This is some pretty nasty stuff, which will obviously result in someone being seriously harmed, right? Someone being harmed badly. Could this really be beneficial? No. The answer is no. 6. How does provoking someone into a mental breakdown, just to then have them diagnosed with mental illness, help keep the peace in the community and try to stop violence? I would assume that it might actually create more violence eventually, especially if the target begins to understand that you are literally trying to break him down mentally just so you can have him diagnosed mentally and discredit him with a mental disorder and discredit him that way. Which brings us to the question number 7, the final question. By continuing to call someone paranoid for pointing out something that is actually happening, could this lead to that individual receiving a false diagnosis of mental illness? And if the answer is yes, who then are the real criminals here? The guy who is being set up, or the people trying to set him up, knowing that he could be carted away to a mental institution for complaining about something that they know damn well is happening because they're involved in it, but refuse to admit, and worse, even deny. This is criminal. The point is this. While frauds pretending to be powerful people might be convincing, especially if they have faked badges and uniforms, once they begin asking people to do things that might cause harm to another, or something that anyone with a functioning brain understands is immoral and probably illegal, a mentally healthy individual must stop and ask himself or herself the question, is the person giving me orders really legitimate? Does this person have good intent? And even, is this real law enforcement, or is it someone fake, posing as law enforcement? But the perpetrators don't ask that question. But the potential perpetrators don't ask that question. And this is how perpetrators are chosen. The perpetrators don't ask these questions because they lack the discernment to even consider the moral implications of what they are being asked to do. Those who aren't actually amoral psychopaths will eventually become immoral sociopaths simply by continuing to deny the truth in their crimes in an attempt to justify to themselves what they're doing. This is the psychology of a perpetrator. This is what we're up against. And this was only the basics.